Hello, dream catchers, and welcome to another exciting day in the Writer's Haven. I'm your host, Helena, and with us today is Christian inspirational writer Aleysha Proctor. Aleysha has authored 5 inspirational books, including Jazz, Java, and Jesus, Christian Devotions to Soothe Your Soul, which was recently released in audiobook form. Aleysha has been featured in a number of business, literary, and lifestyle publications, including Black Enterprise, The Washingtonian, The Washington Post, and The Baltimore Sun. And for the last 4 years, she's hosted her own radio show on WLVS radio called Inspiration for Life, which can be heard in over 135 countries. We can go on and on about Aleysha's accomplishments, but let's jump right into her interview and get some golden nuggets that we can add to our writer's toolbox. Join me in giving a warm and hearty Dreamcatcher welcome to author Aleysha Proctor.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Well, I am so glad that you were able to make room on your very busy schedule to be in the Writer's Haven. And you know, one thing that I just found great about you and your artistry is that you have been able to apply your artistry in so many different ways, you know, through blogging, you have your radio show, you're an author, you're an inspirational speaker. And so all of those things involve some level of writing.
That's right.
So let's, I guess we should pick one. Let's talk about the inspirational books that you write.
Okay.
Specifically, I'm just going to put this up so everyone can see the name of her book, Jazz, Java, and Jesus. Talk to us about not just this specific book, but all of the inspirational books that you've done and your process in writing them.
Yeah. So when I first got started with writing books, I know you've heard it a million times. People say, "I've got a book in me. I want to write a book."
Yes.
You know, I've heard it probably 2 million times from other people, and so I just did not want to be one of those people who just kept saying, "I've got this book in me. I'm going to write it one day," right? And so my first book, I was at the hair salon under the hair dryer. And I was determined I'm just going to write a book. You know, I had totally made that decision. I'm going to write a book. So I pulled a napkin out of my purse and wrote out the table of contents while I was sitting under the hair dryer. And then when I got home and started, you know, putting it on the computer, you know, putting meat to the table of contents. And it probably took less than 6 months to bring that book to fruition.
And that was with Style and Amazing Grace?
That was with Style and Amazing Grace. And then it's like, once you get that first one done, you know, it feels easier to keep writing and come up with new books and new topics and all that good stuff. So it's really just getting that first one done, just do it, you know? So that was my process for that one, just writing out the table of contents while I was waiting under the hair dryer. And then the rest was pretty much, you know, like almost like a snowball effect, just keep going, you know?
And there's a theme to all of your books.
Yes.
So so when you sat down and you developed your table of contents, what was it that, based on what you were going through at the time or what you may have been hearing other people talk about and you could relate to it, and then you thought, well, let me write a book about it? How did that happen?
It was a combination of things. I would say pretty much it was just based on my life. Well, for instance, all of my books are Christian inspirational books. I've actually been in the church since I was 10 years old. So it's a lifestyle for me. So it was based on my life. And then I would always have people, you know, asking for advice and, you know, guidance. And so some of it was based on, you know, what I was getting back from other people, the questions and the words of wisdom that people were asking for, and scriptures that people were asking for to get through particular hardships in their life. And so it just kind of all came together.
Okay. So let's talk more specifically then about Jazz, Java, and Jesus. And I know you're very excited about it being now released in audiobook
Yes,
form.
indeed.
And so when you wrote it, did you write it with that in mind?
No. Jazz, Java, and Jesus was the 3rd book out of my 5 books. And so once I decided, well, for instance, when I wrote that book, I was writing for an online Bible study group.
Okay.
writing devotions and Bible studies for them. So I had the collection of writings, and then I said, well, this is going to be my third book. And so I parlayed all those writings together and added some more things to it, and then I had a third book. I didn't do the audiobook until last year, 2017. So that book had been out for a little over 7 years at that point. And that's really the beauty of an audiobook. You can go to your backlist and create an audiobook out of your older titles. But when I got to the idea, I need to start doing audiobooks because it seems like audio is the future, that was the first book that I said I wanted to turn into an audiobook.
And the reason why I asked that is because, like, the format of your book, I mean,
Yes.
it's a devotional
Yes.
type of book, and it also has areas of inspiration and a place where you can write notes,
Right.
and it's nonfiction work. And I just wondered how difficult would it be to turn that into an audio book piece versus if it was fiction.
Right. Now, when I decided to do an audiobook, I knew a narrator could not narrate my book except for me
Okay.
because I knew the work, and I write like in second person, like we're just having a conversation. So it would be hard to transfer that to a narrator. So I was the one that was going to go into the studio and do the recording. And just like we're talking now, I would kind of even add side notes. So people who've gotten the audiobook, they've heard like some updates and some side notes that people who've read the paperback or the ebook have not gotten.
Yeah, exactly. That was my point, because I actually, of course, did, as part of the research for the show, did get the audiobook.
Great.
And one, so the first part of it that has the scripture,
Yes.
it was very, I don't want to say preachy, but it was just very straight and direct. And then when you went into the discussion about it and then the devotional piece, it was very conversational. And I liked the way you made that transition.
Thank you.
Between just kind of, okay, this is the scripture and this is the way I'm gonna read it, and now I'm having a conversation with you, the reader, based on the theme of the scripture that I just read.
Yeah, thank you.
So
thank you, because that's exactly what I was trying to capture. So thank you for saying that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So tell us more, since you did the narration for the book. Tell us more about that process. Did you go into a studio?
I did.
How did that work?
Yep, I went into the studio at WLVS Radio. I think Jazz Job and Jesus is a short book. I like to keep my books fairly short, so people don't have a reason to not finish it, because I know how I am when I'm reading books. If I'm reading a big 300-page book, it's going to take me a while to get through that. But I keep them short. So I think I was in the studio for maybe 5 or 6 hours. It was broken up, so I might have had 2-hour sessions. And then I have to come back and record some more and do some edits. There was a technician there because all of the techie specs, I don't do those too well, so I just said, this is how they want all the formats so that I can upload, and I just gave that to the producer or the technician, and he handled all the techie parts.
Okay, and so I think I recall that the audiobook ends up being 2 hours and 17 minutes.
That's right.
So 5 hours
Yep.
broken out
Yep.
and edited down to 2 hours and 17 minutes.
That's right.
And so it took that long because you basically took your time and putting it
I
together.
did. And I remember, going into the studio, the sound booth, and, he would say, pick up where you left off when you said, and in his name, something like that. And then there would be times when I would mess up, I'm recording it, and then I would say, oh, I missed something. And so he would like, that's okay, keep going. So the editing part. But, when we went through the editing, the technician was actually in tears. When he would hear me read the book. And that's not necessarily like the place to go to for, like, they don't specialize like in gospel recording. So this is like, they handle all genres. So this was somewhat new to him, but he was actually moved to tears, and he would say I needed to hear that, because he then told me how he was going through some really personal issues in his life.
Okay, so after it was recorded. Were you happy with the finished
I
product? Are you
was.
happy that you went the route of narrating it yourself?
I am, because again, a narrator besides myself would not have known to put those sidebars and side notes in there, or to put some updates in there, or to kind of want to break it down even a little bit further, or to even add to some of the things that are in the written form. They just would not have been able to capture that.
Okay. So, what inspired you to write Jazz, Java, and Jesus?
Well, I was writing for an online Bible study group at that time. I would write devotions for them as well as Bible study, because there are some churches that have used my books in their Bible study. Yeah. And so I would get so much feedback, like women, it was primarily a women's group that was the Bible study, online Bible study group, and they would just say how they needed that, that was confirmation, or how it really blessed them, or that was a word for them, so the confirmation was coming from them that more people needed to hear this. And that's when I said, okay, when I finish writing these segments for this group, I'm going to put it all into a book.
Okay, so it started off as Bible study teachings.
That's right.
That you translated into a book of devotions.
Absolutely.
And what was the process that you used in developing it? I'm just trying to get a sense, because I'm also working notes of how other authors have approached their nonfiction work.
I think, again, just going by like a scripture, like Romans 8:28, and we know that all things work together for good for those who love the Lord and who are the called according to his purpose. Knowing how that scripture talks to so many people who are going through something, to know even though I'm going through these hardships, it's still going to work out for my good. It's part of the process. And so I would more so take a scripture and then just go from there and start, breaking it down to 2000. At that time, it was almost 2010, breaking it down to 2010 living. If I was writing it today, it would be 2018 living, based on the scriptures, because, how often do you hear people say, the Bible isn't for today, but actually it is. And so that
Timeless.
is, yes, exactly. So I believe that's part of a gift that I've been given, to be able to, make the scriptures relevant to today's living.
So what advice would you give to another author who is looking to write a book of inspiration or devotion, in terms of how they should approach that process?
I think they have to just do it. Don't keep saying, I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. Just do it. Look at how maybe some other people have written devotional books in their format to get an idea. And then just start with your own style and just keep at it and crafting it. You can start writing it in a journal, or just doing it for like an online group before you actually put it into a book. I think any type of writing, whether it's in a 3-ring binder or one of those composition books, just write it out. And it might not sound like much of anything, but to me, those are usually my blueprints. And then from there, I keep going.
Okay.
So just get started.
Are there any particular authors that influence your writing?
I would say I like, oh gosh, I can see her face,
So
Roberson. I can see her face, but now I can't remember her first name, and I've got several of her books. Also, I like, oh gosh, I'm drawing a blank.
No, it's okay.
I am drawing a blank. But there were several authors.
But they write in the same genre.
Yes, pretty much. And Michelle McKinney Hammond was also
love
one of her. Yes.
Yeah.
I have several of her books. I've heard her speak a gazillion times. She's spoken at my church.
Excuse me.
And
sorry.
she was probably, I think when I first started reading her books, it might have been right before I started writing my first one.
Okay.
And I've read probably 8 to 10 of her books that I have at home. So I really liked her writing, because she pretty much wrote like in the conversation type style that I like to write in.
Yeah.
Like she's just talking, just me and you sitting here talking.
Right. I really, her books are very, very easy reads.
Yes.
And very relatable. I think anyone can read that book.
That's right.
Across ethnicities, and
Absolutely.
glean something from it. Okay, so you're a self-published author.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about that
Hmm.
journey of self-publishing, particularly nonfiction
Yes.
work. How did you go about marketing your book?
Let's see, I bought some marketing services through the self-publishing company that I went through.
Hmm.
However, I would say in this day and age, that was like when I first started, which was like 7 years ago. In this day and age, it's actually more than 7 years ago, but there's just so many more opportunities
Hmm.
out there now. Obviously, social media is one, but I keep hearing the email list is king.
The email list. What
Yes,
is that?
the email list. Keep building your email list and do email marketing because, according to a lot of studies, people are still making purchases based on emails, even over social media posts.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So I did a lot of the marketing myself. I was involved with several groups, and I would let everyone know that I have written a book.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
I remember when my first book came out with Sound Amazing Grace, I was going to a sales conference in Florida, and I was speaking at that conference, and the conference was a business conference, but as part of my being there, they allowed me to have a vendor's table,
Mhm.
and I brought my brand new books with me, and I pretty much sold out of all of them. So that was pretty much like
That's a good day.
exactly that was my springboard to getting out there as an author.
Okay. And excuse me, I'm still getting over a cold. Um, what about, so you talk about social media
Yeah.
as a part of your marketing strategy, and email lists is another part of your marketing strategy. What about book clubs? Is
Hmm.
that something that you engaged in as well?
I did not do a lot with book clubs. I
Okay.
did more things with church groups. I
Okay.
went and spoke at several churches,
Mhm.
and they would say, bring your books with you. We like to do a book signing with you afterwards.
Mhm.
And so I did a lot of church speaking engagements and book signings. And I do my own book signings because, especially as a self-published author, you
Mhm.
really have to take the bull by the horns and get things done because nobody else is going to do it for you.
Right.
So I would go to things like Book Expo
Mhm.
in New York City, which is gigantic. And as you probably know, all the major publishing houses are there giving away free books.
Mhm.
So I got smart because I had been there a few years. The last time I got really smart and said, okay, people come here and they don't expect to buy any book at all. So I'm going to take a lot of books and give them away for free. And I signed them. And I had a blast. My table was, the signing line was long. I was out of books in like 20 minutes. I
Wow.
then started giving away the free codes to some audio books for people who were still in line.
Mhm.
But I just had a blast. So it's things like that that we have to do as self-published authors to keep your book out there, keep your name out there, get some new readers, get a new audience.
Mhm.
We have to keep being creative.
And it probably also helped that you had your own radio show.
Yes.
And then we'll get into blogging in a second, but let's segue to
Yes.
the radio show. Tell us about that
Yes.
experience.
So that was called Inspiration for Life, and it was a Christian. Again, taking the scriptures and applying it to 2018.
Mhm.
How do you live the scriptures in this world? How do you get by day to day? Keeping people encouraged, no matter what's going on around them. So my sister would co-host that with me,
Mm.
and it was just so much fun. We just really had a blast, and it just would always help. I always felt good leaving the studio thinking, even if one person heard me and got inspired, or, got a new outlook on life, it was
Mhm.
totally worth it. I'm
Mhm.
really doing my job.
Right.
So that is what we do, Inspiration for Life Radio. Just to keep the word out there and keep inspiring people because it is so easy just living to be discouraged.
Okay. Okay. And with the blogging, how
Yes.
did that segue into your marketing and
Yeah. So
strategy?
when I started my website, right around the time Jazz Drive and Jesus came out, actually, is when I worked with a young lady, I think out of Texas, who was the first designer for my website. That's when the blogging started as well. So they almost happened at the same time.
Mhm.
And so it
Mhm.
was just like, just do it. This is just like another format to
Mhm.
do some writing and
So
encourage
let's
people.
talk about that. I'm
Yeah.
glad you mentioned it in that way.
Yeah.
So how different, or is there a real difference?
I don't find that there's a difference at all because I would pretty much blog about things to inspire people. Now, there would be some outside companies who would ask me, could you write a review about our products, you know, things like that. There's some companies I did turn down because it just wasn't a good fit. But nevertheless, if it's a post where I'm encouraging people, like I remember going to California and taking a picture of the Pacific Ocean, and I tied that back to the Ten Commandments movie that was coming out because it was right around Easter, and how in the movie, you know, and in the Bible, God opened the Red Sea. And so I used the picture of the Pacific. I was like, can you imagine God split? Because actually when I was there in California, I said, can you imagine God splitting that open and people walking across on dry ground? So I just did a blog post on it. And then Pureflix wanted me to also, like, you know, give them a shout out in it and let people know that they could get the Ten Commandments movie through them. And so, you know, you just add links where appropriate. But it's just, to me, it's just writing. You know, it's just like having another form of conversation with somebody.
And so the companies that you mentioned, they were sponsors for your show or for the blog, or were they?
They only sponsor, well, actually none of it. And actually I preferred to not have sponsors because I did not want anyone, I didn't want to feel like I had to alter the message that I have based on sponsorships.
Right.
And I really didn't seek any sponsors. I remember when I first started the radio show, I came up with like a sponsor sheet and all that kind of stuff, but didn't even use it. And I'm like, I'm going to just keep going. You know, I'm not going to seek sponsors because I don't want to have to, you know, cut the show short to give shout out to sponsors or to say what they want me to say.
Right.
I want to say what I want to say. So, yeah, I actually didn't have sponsors.
Well, you have a lot of leverage in being broadcasted in 135 countries.
Yes.
Of course, people are going to want to, as much as they can,
Yes.
tag along for the ride.
Right. And I got people who wanted to advertise or sponsor the show, and I was like, we're not taking any sponsors or advertisers right now.
Excuse me. That's a great place to be, to be at that place. So did you look to get published by a major, or did you just enjoy the self-publishing route for your books?
I just enjoyed the self-publishing route because when I first decided to write a book, I said, I'm going to write this book. And I don't want anyone to tell me it's not going to be published or it's not going to be in book format. You know, I just didn't want to give anybody else that power. Then once I started going to a bunch of writing conferences, and you go to all those sessions about getting published by a major publishing house, and the people up on the stage would tell you, you know, I shopped my manuscript for 5 years and went to 75 different publishers and no one would accept it. I actually was not going to let that be a stumbling block.
Or to stop you from publishing your book.
Absolutely. I felt I had a message and it had to get out. And so I was not going to, you know, let a publishing house tell me yes or no to whether or not it would get out. So I never even sought a publisher.
So what are some of the things that you just found enriching in the self-publishing process?
I think the fact that you can say what you want to say. And I did work with editors to make sure the grammar was correct and all that good stuff. But I did not want people taking the book, making it into something that I didn't intend it to be. You know, I heard lots of horror stories about that. Now, obviously, that is probably not how it normally goes. But I had heard some horror stories about some people who felt like they really sold their soul and their book to, you know, a publishing house because they felt it wasn't their book after all the editors had their hands on it. So I didn't want to go through that.
Yeah. So with each book, and you have 5 now.
Yes.
You're a lot more experienced now than you were when you started out with self-publishing. What are some of the stumbling blocks that you could share with us in self-publishing?
Absolutely. I think a lot of the companies, especially then, I think they've gotten a little wiser now, but especially then, they would charge you a fortune for some of their marketing services. And unfortunately, I fell for some of those and paid a fortune. But nowadays, there are, like I said before, there's so many options nowadays and so many low cost as well as some free marketing that you can do for yourself and to build your audience and get your books out there. So I would say, especially for new authors, please do not spend your life savings in marketing.
Yeah.
You know, do some really good smart marketing. Nowadays, for instance, when the audiobook came out, I partnered with some people who had much larger social media followings than I did, and they did an advertisement for me, and I might have paid less than $50 for those. But you know, that's smart, right? So as opposed to paying, you know, $5,000 or $10,000 for all these promises that they can't even guarantee. So I would say marketing has really come down in cost, and you just have to be savvy, and you know, especially if you're on social media, and find those people who are talking to the same audience that you're trying to reach, and who have really big followings, and see if they have some sort of like a paid sponsored tweet or Instagram post that they would do for you.
Okay.
So that's very helpful. And keep growing your email list. At every
That
book
seems to be
signing,
key. What's the name of that service?
there's Constant Contact, MailChimp.
So those are some that you would recommend?
Yeah, I think everyone has to build their email list and keep building it. So at every book signing, I would have a email sign-up sheet so people can leave their email address so that I'm building my email list. I'm redoing my website as we speak, and so, you know, collecting emails through the website. So at every opportunity, look for ways to collect emails. And not just spam people, but, you know, send them good stuff and make sure that they opt in to your emails. But keep your email list is king. And even working with a PR, a publicist, they will even tell you your email list is king.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And guard your email list.
And guard the email list. I'm sure those who sign on will appreciate you guarding your email list. So what's next? Are there any projects that you're working on that you can share with us?
Yes. So I'm going to start podcasting.
Okay.
And I'm looking forward to that. It's going to happen this year, 2018. I'm not sure when, but I'm going to have a launch date. And so, of course, I will advertise the launch on Twitter and Instagram for sure, and on my website. And I'm going to be writing more books. And so I'm looking forward to that, yes.
Okay. Dreamcatchers, I know you enjoyed my chat with author Aleysha Proctor. You can follow her writer's journey on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Aleysha Proctor, or visit her webpage at AleyshaProctor.com. Catch us next week for a chat with author Pamela Hart Vines, who will be here to discuss her Amazon best-selling novel, Born of Sin. Trust me when I tell you, you don't want to miss that interview. And if you have to DVR it, do it. As always, you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Writers Haven Show. And tune in to our YouTube, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, Sonos, Alexa, SoundCloud, and Spotify channels to stream our shows and subscribe. So have a great week, and I'll see you next time in the Haven. But until then, catch fire on purpose.